Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Area Control Bros, where we talk about area control games. Mostly.
Mostly, yep.
Mostly, yep. It's true.
On today's episode, we will be discussing two Matagot games by the same designer, Galactic Renaissance and Inish. The new and the old. The Galactic and the Celtic.
Yeah. Sorry,
Two
I
very-
feel like I feel like you've already given away some of our opinion on Galactic Renaissance
I've
by
said nothing.
no, but the way you
The
introduced it
deep
was
sigh before
Yeah.
saying the name.
That was totally subconscious. That was not it was not an affectation. It was just, it came from deep within me, and
Right.
just
Yeah.
erupted.
I just couldn't hold it back. Yeah.
I think
Anyway,
that's fair with that game.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Christian Martinez is the designer here. Obviously, even if the only thing he had designed besides Galactic Renaissance was Inish, I would consider him to be a very strong designer, because that's a good pedigree to have. There are plenty of designers who've just made one amazing game and a bunch of just okay games, and I think he has better than just one good game. He has a godlike game under his belt. So it's a good pedigree to have when you're running a Kickstarter, certainly. And Galactic Renaissance was kickstarted with a little bit of that in mind, which was that I think this was being marketed as like the next in the political trilogy of Inish, Galactic Renaissance, and an as of yet unreleased game or something.
Yeah,
Do you remember
which
that?
is kind of
Blake?
a funny way to put like a trilogy when it's not yet a trilogy.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if it were the third game, but it's the second game, and it's like the second in the trilogy, and it's like, this isn't even a real game yet. It's on Kickstarter. It's
Right.
like,
It
Right.
would have probably been more appropriate to say like the fourth of their area control games, But
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
fair. Although, was Galactic Renaissance published by? Yeah, I guess it was published by Matagot still.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, Matagot has really leaned into the use of Kickstarter as a pre-order more than a Kickstarter, where it's kind of like, we're going to sell this game in retail, but you got to back it to get the metal coins and the playmats and the goodies and the fifth or sixth player expansions. In the case of Kemet, they had a bunch of extra stuff, but the retail version is perfectly great. And I'm sure if you got the retail version of Galactic Renaissance, you would not be missing out on anything particularly important either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably just that
I would
mat.
say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mat but man, I did the
You can put the board
Kickstarter,
over,
and
yeah.
shoot,
Yeah,
like the
it's
extra stuff
debatable.
they give you doesn't even fit in the box. So
that's
it does, but
anti-meta.
it barely fits, right? You have to squeeze it a bit. They don't design
Yeah.
for it.
Box design. That could take up an entire podcast episode. Is
Yeah,
how do
our
they expect
favorite
you to fit
boxes. Yeah. Our
favorite
favorite and
boxes,
least
or
favorite
even
boxes.
just how do they expect you to fit these things in the box without there being lift? And if there's
Right.
lift, then all the rules are out the window, right?
Yeah.
Just pure chaos in the streets.
Yeah, I don't want spoilers for our box episode, but what is the game that like does it really well?
Dwellings.
Dwellings. Yeah, I mean, right there. Yeah.
What was the other game recently? Oh, Eclipse. Eclipse obviously has a great insert and box design.
Very good on Eclipse.
Oathsworn as well.
But
Anyway.
you're right though. Yeah, you don't miss out on much with the retail copy. I know they have a Kickstarter right now for Komet, or I guess it's a Game Found, I think.
Yeah.
But the last time they ran one, one of the bonuses was getting like 15% larger minis, which is just like,
I don't want
I
that.
I don't know, man. I'm gonna
That's
get the
a downside
retail.
to me.
Right, it's a Yeah, so you're
man.
not missing out on much with the Matagot games if you get the retail, in my opinion.
Anyway, that's a good thing. I'm happy that the retail versions are good.
Agreed.
Anyway, so we're going to start with Galactic Renaissance. This is a 2.8 weight on BGG, and it's rated as 7.4 currently. So, worth mentioning, Galactic Renaissance, 248 ratings. Inish has 20k ratings.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty stark difference. Then again, Inish from 2016, but still, 20k ratings is a lot. Inish is a popular game. for the hobby, by the hobby standards, obviously not popular like
It's
mass
not a
market.
it's not a household name.
It's not a,
Yeah, it's below the like top of the iceberg. It's below the waterline, but just,
I think Inish, well, we'll talk about Inish, but I do think Inish is the kind of game that I feel like should be a household name, like El Grande, where I think you could teach it to a family and then, you can play with your family and they like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think you could teach your family Galactic Renaissance.
No. No, I don't think it
Yeah.
passes the
I
grandma
I
test.
it doesn't. Yeah, the grandma
The
test.
grandma test is not passed. We can say that
No.
right before even talking
No,
about the
no.
gameplay.
Yeah.
Right. It's true. Like, it might not be so hard to pick up the basic gist of things because your turn structure ends up being, well, at the beginning of the game, the first turn you'll have 3 cards, but after that you kind of have 2 cards for a while until you get to put down one of your little what it's not a citadel in this one, but whatever you call it in
Yeah.
Galactic
The
Renaissance.
Institutes.
The
I've
Institute, yeah. And until you put down the Institute, you're like having a 2 card hand, so the game kinda plays itself early on. Like, you just play your 2 cards if you can, or maybe you can only play one sometimes and you get
yeah.
boned.
Should we start with the pros before we dive into the
Right.
long list of
Here.
cons?
I think we
I
should maybe go with
yeah.
like the structure of the game.
Yeah,
Sure,
I've got
sure.
here's what I'm cooking with. So, like the theme of the game Galactic Renaissance is that you are all the players are like representing like some faction of people that are in the like prequels like Senate. Like you're supposed to just be like you know, it's like politics, like things are peaceful relatively. You're not fighting, you're like causing uproar and stuff. Like there's all of this like theming around that of like it's galactic politics, hence the name like Galactic Renaissance. And I think that that's reflective of the gameplay as well because I find the game very um sometimes it almost seems deliberately like hard to parse. And I don't think that's a bad or good thing. I think that's like maybe what he's going for, but like that's sort of how the game feels is like, like in the Nebulon district, perhaps we should send a representative. Like,
Hmm.
it's not like
Yeah.
it's not like there's not like a ton of like like there's this really exciting thing happening. Like honestly, like a lot of the times on like your guys' turns, I'm like they're doing something, I'm not exactly sure what. We have these objectives that we're all going for. So like I kind of have an idea, but I don't know. It's kind of it's hard to figure out what's going on with their bureaucracy.
Yeah. I would agree. It does get hard to understand what other people are doing, and even a bit hard to understand exactly what you should be doing during the game. And yeah, not necessarily a bad thing. We talked about Huang a couple episodes ago, and I think that game has a similar feel in that, and for similar reasons, right? You're kind of coexisting in these spaces and not necessarily having to start conflicts just because you're coexisting. And then you need to be very strategic about when you do start a conflict. Um, but it's kind of hard to know exactly like when and why you should.
I
Yeah.
think another thing about this game is Huang, the decision space is enormous. I don't
Yes.
think the decision space is actually that big in this game. And there are multiple reasons why. As you mentioned, the card limit, your hand size limit, especially early, is quite small. And moreover, it's also not unlikely that you're just doing one thing on your turn because your access to the cards or activated or planet activations that allow you to do something and then do another thing might be low, or you might not have a specialist card that does that in the first place, or it's not in your hand. So you might have turns where you do 8 things, and you might have a lot of turns where you do one thing. And there's not really a lot of consistency between your turns, or even between other players' turns and your own turn. And I joked about it the last time we played this, but I was like saying like, "Oh wow, Blake's like 5 turns ahead of me," and like I was joking when I said that, but it kind of, regardless of how much or how little he's doing with those extra actions, for you to be on the other side of that, it does feel kind of like bad because it's
Yeah,
like, you know, and everybody has the turns where you barely do anything in this game because you just have that kind of hand sometimes, and it doesn't feel like you don't have much input on that. um you do have the ability to kind of stack your deck, because I think the most interesting thing about this whole game is the fact you don't shuffle, and you can kind of stack your deck depending on like how you're playing your cards in order, such that they come back to you in a certain order. So you can create good future turns by playing your cards this turn in a certain order,
right.
which I do think is pretty cool. That's a cool idea.
But wouldn't
However,
it be cooler if you had like let's say you had like a 5 card hand and maybe you were only ever going to play 3 cards in a turn. Well,
that's
now you
better.
have
But
so much more
yeah,
control over how that deck is going to end up getting stacked. And in Galactic Renaissance, it's like if I have 2 cards and I'm able to play both of them, I'm going to. And a lot of the
yes,
time when you're able to play both of them, you have to play them in a specific order. So you don't even get to interact with
that's
that cool mechanic of the deck never gets shuffled. You put your cards on the bottom of your deck in the same order you played them, and you don't even get to
that's
interact with that cool mechanic sometimes, which is
That's exactly what I
frustrating.
was going to say. I was coping for the game by saying like, well, this is a nice idea, but ultimately you typically have to sequence your like extra actions in a certain way, or else your turn won't work at all. And because you're forced to sequence them that way, you don't have any ability to actually utilize that idea, which is like stacking your deck in a certain order. And that being the case, your turns kind of play themselves, which I
Yeah,
really don't like. I'll just say straight up, I don't like. This is why it's so different from Huang, because in Huang, it's like, oh my god, what do I do? I can do 50 different things. I've got so many possibilities. This game is kind of like, well, I'll just play my hand, and you'll have sort of a little bit of decision making. Like, if you're playing a move emissaries card, maybe you have to choose between where you're moving them, to this planet or to that planet. Do I want to cause disorder or not? That's kind of the interesting part of the game, is the player interaction, which I don't hate. I think disorder can be kind of cool, uh, but that's kind of where your decision making is. Your hand doesn't really contain decision making, which I think is really weird,
it
honestly.
is weird.
Yeah, and like the one card you start with that moves emissaries, like ends your turn. It's not one that you can keep playing afterwards. Like it's
Yep,
like that's what you're doing on your turn if you don't have any other cards before that could let you play again. And also like like where's my movement guy? Is the question I have on a lot of my turns. Is like I don't really feel like I can like do anything that I want to. And it does feel like I'm operating this like bureaucracy, but not necessarily like the fun parts of the bureaucracy. It's like, where's my victory points guy? He's where is he? I need him. I need him
Mm.
now. Like, it's like, and I can't get him. I can't get a hold of this guy. I have to wait. I have to wait a couple turns. Like,
there's the political simulation part, right?
right, yeah, like, and it's like, well, I guess some of this is intentional, like, but it doesn't feel like necessarily the fun parts about like a galactic empire, which is like maybe why there's not so many games made about renaissances and more games made about war and stuff, like,
Renaissance is actually a popular Euro game setting. I mean, you got
well,
the
yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of Euro games set in the Renaissance actually. So, but anyway, I totally agree with what you're saying though. It is weird. It does feel like this game. I just this is a game that I think should have been play tested for another year. You know, I think maybe
Yeah,
that would have ironed it out. But this is something that we see time and again with crowdfunded titles, which is that they needed to bake for longer. They needed more people needed to see them. more people needed to say, hey, this mechanic isn't fun, or this part of the game is my favorite part. Let's make this part of the game a bigger thing that you focus on. And just the more opinions you get, obviously some of them are going to be useless and some of them will differ from yours in such a way that you don't want to accept that uh, creative input. But it's going to let you see how other people feel about it and what people enjoy about your game. And I think in this particular game's case, it just feels like it was not play tested enough. And maybe it was, and I'm wrong, and it's just that the playtest group all like this kind of game, but it just seems weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of an issue with the industry right now of these Kickstarter games being under tested and then not really being punished for it by the market, right? Because people get excited. Um, they see this cool thing, ends up being more about the advertising. And then you even look at the Board Game Geek rating, and you start scrolling through like, well, when did people rate this? And it's like all immediately after or even before fulfillment happened. So you're talking about people who just got their shiny new toy and you know were excited to get out of the box and gave it a high rating. And the reality is the game feels very unpolished. Um, Even the areas of it that seem really cool. And so one of the classic cool things about these Matagot area control games is that they all have kind of cool ending like victory conditions that you kind of have a chance to stop people. I think maybe is the best way to put it. And we'll talk about that with Inish, of course. But in the context of Galactic Renaissance here, the way they do that. The Galactic Renaissance has a victory point system. People are racing to 30 victory points, and the sort of Matagot game end twist that they put on that is that after you get to 20 points, you need to get your last 10 points in a single turn. So if you were to go from 20 points to 25 points in a single turn, boom, you go right back down to 20. And that's kind of the cool the cool ending win con here. And in my opinion, it ends up not being that important, really.
No,
You
it's barely there. And whenever we play this game, whenever we have played this game, somebody's just like, okay, well, I just win this turn,
yeah,
and it's like, oh, cool, GG. Whereas in Inish or Kemet, um, somebody's like obviously, well, in Inish you're literally taking the pretender token, right, in order to be able to win, so you're announcing that you're in a position to win. But then even after they do that, everyone's has a chance to respond in various ways.
yes, there's sort
And
of a dog pile, which I think for guys like us is very fun.
yes.
Yeah.
And then Kemet, of course, also it's very visible when you're pushing for a win, when you're like in contention. And Kemet, just like Inish, you got to be ready for the dog pile. If you're pushing for the win, you have to be ready for everybody to come after you. Like
Yes,
that's
because
just
you have
part of
those
the game.
temporary victory points
Yes,
in Komet,
yes. And so
and so people say, okay, well now I need to take those away from that guy, and that
yeah,
can be a big
and
deal.
whereas
Yeah.
this game, it's very Euro gamey. It's kind of like, well, I just win.
Yeah.
You just got to
I
deal with that.
I think my big play to try to stop Blake from winning was to move one guy from a planet to another planet where Blake wasn't, to potentially try to stop him from scoring one VP. And that was
Yeah,
like all I could do to influence the potential of the game. And then he ended up scoring like 13. And it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like, well, who cared? Like, and that's a problem also with like the win conditions in this game, which is like, it's very anti-area control in that it's like, oh, I want to be coexisting with a bunch of people in these specific places, and I also want to be like maybe even the person with the least amount of plastic here, but I have an institute. I think we saw that this game, and it's like, I guess, like, maybe you're opening yourself up to being attacked, but attacking feels bad, like overwhelming an area. Like you have to remove your own guys first, like in a disorder. So like, I don't know. It just ends
yeah.
up
Attacking
being,
feeling bad is another problem with this game. But just to piggyback off what you said, Ben, uh, something that's weird about the wanting to have the fewest people in a on a planet is if if you're below a certain threshold, like if you only have one dude there or one institute, God forbid, if somebody causes disorder on that planet, you could be hosed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's really bad. And so even though that's how you might score VP, it's going in completely different directions. Like it's making you do something that you don't want to do that's going to expose yourself in a way that no other objective in the game forces you to be exposed to. Like the ones that are just, share a planet with a red portal. It's like, sure, of course, that's easy to have. But the ones where you have to have the fewest elements and still be there create this weird situation where you must expose yourself to disorder in a weird way. And I don't really like that in a victory point condition. It's making you do something that's not smart to do in the game to score.
Yeah.
It's not like do the right thing, we'll reward you for it. It's like do something dumb and you'll get more points. And it's like I don't want to be forced into doing something that's dumb, and especially because player interaction in this game is not that strong. And so going out of your way to put yourself in a position where player interaction can be strong seems crazy, right? It's almost better just to chase the other VP objectives in the market,
Yeah.
unless you incidentally score that one. I mean,
Right. And to add to that about these kind of weird victory conditions, right? Because a lot of them are kind of weird, even the ones that make sense of, like you guys were mentioning, okay, well, maybe you have to be on a planet, a shared planet, right? Someone else is also there that has a certain color of portal, right? And these portals, there's 3 different portal colors, and that's how all the planets get interconnected. You have to have the same portal in order to travel between 2 planets. That'll just happen, and that is kind of interesting because it forces you to kind of coexist with people and then maybe open yourself up to a disorder later, right? Create these situations where other players are able to push for some extra advantage by causing a disorder where maybe they otherwise wouldn't be able to sneak in there and have a good reason to, if not for these objectives. But even those ones, it's just like, I don't know, man. We're coexisting. We're eventually going to get to our senator, which is the one card in the deck, at least in the base deck. And I think there are very few specialist cards that will give you additional scoring opportunities, maybe some that give you 1 VP here or there. But to give a big boost, especially one capable of getting you that 10 victory points at the end, it's pretty much just going to be the senator. And you only got one in your deck. And so, you're setting up these places where you're sharing a planet with someone else. Well, they're getting just as many points out of that as you are. And so that kind of leads back to the idea of, well, it's just a bit murky, the decision making of like, well, who should I be with? Who shouldn't I be with? I don't know. It ends up kind of weird. And on top of that, I don't even like that these objectives are variable. When you start up the game, you have you take this big stack. You probably have 20 objectives in this stack, and you shuffle it all up and you take out 5 of them, and 2 of them are revealed at the start of the game and 3 of them are not. And the 2 that are revealed at the start of the game will eventually be replaced by 2 that are not revealed at the beginning, and then a third one will come out as well. And I don't know, you can get really weird mixes, and I think it lends itself to this game feeling very unrefined because you're always going for something so different depending on what objectives end up in the in the game.
and another thing, I really, really don't like the objective system in this game. I think it's the worst thing. Like if I had to point to one problem that's the biggest, I think it's the objective system. But there are other things with it, like the fact that 2 of those objectives are flipping by the time somebody gets to 20 points. Basically, if you think about it, 2 of those objectives that you see at the beginning, then I think in this game you spend more of the game like below 20 points than above it. Would
Yeah.
you guys agree with that? And so
Mm-hmm.
you spend most of the game looking at these 2 objectives, and those are the 2 objectives that don't matter at all for winning the game because they'll be
Right.
flipped. And so
Yeah.
you're designing this whole game plan around scoring And by the way, it can be flipped when it's not your turn, get to you, and then card's flipped. I guess you just don't get a score on that. But even setting that aside, when you have to actually score your big 10-pointer turn, those objectives are utterly meaningless. They're not in the game anymore. And so I really think that's just bad.
Yeah.
And I think that this is something that's shown up in a couple other games lately, like Fractured Sky. I actually think we'll talk about it in another episode, but I think it's a pretty fun game. And once again, the biggest problem with that game is the objective system. And it's when
Hmm.
I look at the objective system for this game, I kind of get a similar vibe. I
Yeah.
actually think
We,
Fractured
we've
Sky is
said we've said let's scrap the there's kind of two sets of objectives in Fractured Sky, but there's this top row of them that are present throughout the whole game and are hidden and will only be revealed at the end of the round that you're going to score them on. And we've basically said house rule, let's scrap those and just score points with the other objective system that just comes out every round and you have a lot more control over, because it's genuinely unfun. And I agree, Will, this reminds me of that, where it feels like you don't have much control over these objectives by the time they come out. Because as we mentioned, you have one card in your starting deck that lets you move a significant number of guys, and that's a big deal for setting up these uh, scoring opportunities with these objectives. You've got one of them in your deck. These objectives could come out after you've already used him to move everything, and then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
that's
It's just not a good feeling.
and the guy who lets you move stuff ends your turn. The senator also ends your turn. So you
Yeah,
literally
can't do them
can't
both.
be you can't do them both unless you have a specialist or a planet. And this is random cards coming out of the random deck of planets and cards. Like, you're not guaranteed to have it every game. Although you might be able to dig quite deeply if you've got a bunch of foundations into the deck to look for something. But you're not guaranteed to ever in your game have the ability to do both those things in one turn, which is a huge deal. I mean, that might be the difference between like a 5 point turn, or as Blake got like a 13-point turn last game.
Yeah. Yeah. But let's also touch on uh, table presence, because this is
Hmm.
the one of the most confused and like hard to parse games by the end of the game. Like I didn't even like I think it was the turn before Blake won this last game we were playing. We had so many planets out. They're just all mixed mashed thrown wherever. Like they're not connected. They're connected by portals, but like you're not paying too close of attention to it. And I was like counting, like it was finally to my turn where it was like, I was like, I'm going to count what VP that Blake might have. And it was like, oh, he's at like a potential of 9 if he has his senator this round. So we have to like start doing something about this. And I have the one card in my deck that can actually maybe do something. And as I said before, it was move one guy from one planet to another planet. And it's like
And end your
I
turn.
yeah, and
Yeah,
my turn, and
and
then
your
I'm
turn.
done.
Yeah, that's
That
it.
was all I could do
Right.
to maybe
But
potentially
but
stop
I
this
I think the
juggernaut.
important part being, like, to even count up how many points I might have is so like time consuming and annoying to do.
I
You
mean,
know,
Yeah,
because
I
you have
I
all these
just
planets out.
this
yeah,
game, I just hate even the idea of like trying to optimize a scoring turn. And I'm not averse to doing that. Like in a game where I feel like it's interesting, like Dominant Species, I'll be sitting there with my freaking notepad and calculator trying to figure out how to like make some sicko play. But this
Yeah.
this game, I just like I honest and
yeah.
I frankly, and I'm almost afraid to say this, I just don't care.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was like looking at the
I
board, and
just
it was like
yeah.
I don't feel like I feel like I would have had to take like I have some Machiavellian like 4 turn plan to like try to stop Blake at all. Like I would have had to been like calculating all of it out like way in advance. And it's like
Yeah.
it's like so hard to parse what, and then like some more planets will just come out, and then it's like,
Hmm.
well, whatever. you
Yeah,
know
and well, that's another point. Is I think it's not just that the board is unreadable for various reasons. In the early game, it's okay, but in late game, you got so many planets on the table that Nobody's got any idea what's going on anymore. And on top of that, the fact you take the little disk of the planet and it goes in your tableau, whereas I think it's fun to have that in your tableau, like it looks fun in front of you. Um, what it means is that other people don't know what that planet does unless you specifically tell them. And you have to ask people, like, oh, what does that planet do? Am I interested in
Yeah.
taking it?
Or are you thinking of taking my planet? Why are you asking there?
Yeah, and
Maybe I'll
so
protect it, you know?
yeah, and there's no other way to know what that planet does other than the little planet tile that's now in their tableau. And there are cards that care about taking planets from each other, although we don't see it that often. But it feels like that part of the game just doesn't matter in the end. It's just you get certain planets, and those are the planets you have, and it's a
Yeah.
waste of time.
Yeah.
The planets don't feel good either. You have like two guys in your deck who can like do anything with the planets, and they also can do other stuff. Like it's your exploration guy who it's like, well, I guess I probably want to explore a planet. And then it's your guy that can like take a planet that you probably already have that you're leading in. And then both of those have the opportunity to, instead of doing those things, to like use one of your planet abilities. So you don't even really like see the planet abilities all that often anyway. Like I think I used like my home planet, the one I started with, like once, like maybe twice, you know? And I didn't even really use all of that much that was special about it. I just used it to like move a guy, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of variance between how useful those planet abilities are, and again, it's just random coming out of the deck. You have no idea. But at the same time, despite it being totally random and you have no idea, you should just always use the explore guy to explore because it's a free action. It's a free action that moves a guy onto a planet that can get you VP. Plus, you get to
Yeah.
activate it for free and do something else afterwards. It's just there's zero brain cells. It's just like, yeah, of course I explore. I mean,
Well,
there's no.
a lot of your planet tiles you activate will let you go again as well. I think there are some that are certainly
I
worth
mean,
activating.
unless it's like a
But
senator
it's
turn where
I
you're
think
scoring.
early
But
on especially it's like, yeah, I'm just going to explore and then increase the number of planets that we have on this board and make it more and more unreadable.
yeah, that's the
You
other
know,
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
obviously there's going to be some comparisons to Inish here, and I think we've sort of been avoiding it a little bit. But in terms of the board readability, the fact that you have like this portal, and again, it's one of those things where it feels like it could be so cool. Just like the deck stacking feels like it could be so cool. Well, this idea of connecting all these places via portal feels like it could be so cool. We can be on opposite sides of the galaxy and we can be able to we can travel between our planets, but then I can't travel to the one that's right next to me. And that sounds like it might be very interesting, but it just ends up being unreadable, and you just accelerate to more and more planets, and you end up having some where it's like it doesn't even matter, you know? It just
I
doesn't
okay. I
sometimes.
have I've met some people while playing Twilight Imperium that are like, man, I still am confused by the like a-holes, like the wormholes. Like I'm still so confused as to
the
how
a
those
holes and the
work.
b holes.
Yeah,
Right, the
it's
a-holes
like
and the
and
b-holes.
and that's this entire game. Is like
It's all of
everything
it.
is a wormhole. Like I dread
Everything
to
is a
think
wormhole.
of I dread to think of like one of those people who have a hard time with like the Twilight Imperium wormholes playing this game, and they would just it would just be like, oh, whatever. Who
Well, by
cares?
the end of
Mm,
this
You
game, it's
know?
taking up Twilight Imperium levels of table space. I mean,
right.
it's
And
just,
it's deceptive about the amount of table space it takes up, because it starts out and you just got a few planets out there. And by the end, you're like, holy crap, we don't have a big enough table. What's
yeah.
going
If you're
on?
like a board game player and you don't have a big table in your home or your apartment or your wherever you play board
A
games
local
in a
meetup
meetup
or
or
whatever,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, like wherever you're playing, if you don't have a big table for this game, I think you just can't play it. You have to pull the Explorer card out of the deck because it'll start out and not take up much room, but then it just keeps growing and growing and growing significantly. And before you know it, you'd have to bring a coffee table over, and then you have to bring somebody to crouch on the ground, and you put a couple planets on their back, and you know I don't know how else you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is a complete character assassination, but it grows like a cancer.
Okay, now you're going too far.
I know. I
Oh,
knew it
man.
was too far, but I thought it was funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, there
It's
you
It's
go.
not
no.
that bad.
Anyway,
It's not that bad.
I have said pretty much everything that I think I want to say about this game that I could think of. unless we're gonna meme about the cosmic rabbit or something.
I mean, I
I'll
took the cosmic rabbit. It was, yeah.
I'll say a few things. Cosmic Rabbit, they make it seem like a big deal. It's kind of a unique one of these specialist cards, right? You got your base deck, and then you got all these specialist cards that you add in, and it can let you peek at the objectives yet to come. Which, as we mentioned, it's kind of frustrating not knowing what's coming up, not being able to plan around it. The Cosmic Rabbit doesn't mitigate that enough. It's not really a counterpoint to that argument, I don't think. The art
It's
is
one card.
okay
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
this game, I would say. What do you guys think about the art? I think it's
I,
okay.
I have a similar feeling on this one as the art and fractal. I don't
I was
know.
good. I agree. I'd
It,
say about almost exactly the same.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
there's something about it. Like some of the portraits are kind of cool, but again, it's
some
just
of them
kind
are
of a
cool, but
space
not the
theme. But
base
like,
deck ones. The base deck ones
no,
are pretty drab.
I will
I
say
don't
maybe
know.
this has a little edge on Fractal because I think some of the card art is cool.
Some of it's
Um,
Yeah,
charming. Yeah,
I don't love like the board and like the minis, but I think some of the card art is cool.
yeah. Your
I,
senator is
I was
like an
actually going to
alligator
give
guy.
the minis
I
a
know
thumbs
that.
up. I think the minis are cool. Each color has their own little sculpted minis. I think most of them are interesting. Um, but I could see not liking them. I think they're about the right size. They're maybe a
They're the
little
right
bit bigger
size,
than
but
they
I
need to
just think
be,
they're kind
but
of weird.
they are a
Like
little weird.
the mini size, and I think their use in the game is fine. I'm not personally a fan of the sculpts. I guess is
Yeah,
how
The
you would say
they're
it.
all
busts.
kind of
Yeah.
like busts. Like it's from like the
Yeah.
torso up, all of them. It's a little bit weird. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't have too much else other than that though. Um, I had high hopes for this one, and I really, really did want to like this game, and I just don't.
I did too. I
Yeah.
want
Yeah,
it always hurts more when you want to like it than if you just don't care about it to begin with.
Yeah.
Oh,
I should.
actually, I do have one more
Yeah.
thing. Rule book sucks. Not even a table of contents in that bad boy. It's terrible.
Yeah.
No table of contents, no index.
No
I
index.
I do
Nothing.
want to mention this point, which is we have only played this twice, but I concur with what Blake said after the second time we played, which is that the juice is not worth the squeeze. Like
Yeah.
given what we've played so far, like maybe there's like 10 plays in, you're like you really know the specialist decks and what the planets all do, and you're really like thinking about other people's turns, but I'm not seeing it. Like I really don't see me ever really caring all that much about what's going on.
Well,
Um,
just as a hypothetical, how many games that you currently really like now did you not find many redeeming qualities for in your first two plays of them?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think we're all in the camp of like, let's really make sure we understand a game before we like give it a number grade. But I think in this particular case, and in some other cases as well, we played enough of these games that we like figure it out, and I think we know what's going on. And if
yeah,
there was
Yeah.
something significantly different, or if there was some significant obvious depth that we had not yet plumbed, I think we would notice that and like say
yeah,
something about it and say like, hey, like we really have no idea. And so in that sense, I agree, Ben. There's like the possibility we're missing something, but we played a lot of games like this, and um, as such, I would say we're decently well qualified to comment on it.
yeah. I will say that was also a funny thing that happened while trying to navigate the rule book on a specific question. I tried to Google the rule, couldn't find it, but did find a Reddit thread that was just titled "Galactic Renaissance." Am I missing something? Like, which is again mirrors how I feel about this game, which is like, what, am I missing something? Like, is there
Right.
some fundamental rule that we are like not playing on? Am I supposed to be drawing more cards? Is there something that that we're getting wrong? Like it feels like, yeah, again, it goes back to the like I want to enjoy this game, but it seems like what's going on? I can't find it. I can't really pinpoint it. You know?
Yeah. I agree.
All right, shall we? So BGG gives this a 7.4. Who wants to go first on this one?
I'd be down to give my rating here.
You're gonna go
Yeah,
first, Blake.
I'm gonna lock mine in my brain so that you guys
Mine's
don't
locked in
affect
too,
me.
but
Yeah,
Blake, this is Blake's copy of the game, so I feel like it's the most depressing for him to speak ill of it. So I'm interested to
It
see.
is, and like I said, I really did want to like this one because I
Yeah,
love
no,
Inish,
I think
and
we
we'll
all
talk
did.
about
We
that.
all did.
yeah,
We all wanted to like this
Um,
one.
yeah. Also, it being a 2.8, I feel like this game could be a little bit higher on the weight rating.
Yeah.
But in terms of my score, I think I would give this one like a 4.5. I would say. Gave Bloodstones a 5.5. That game was like even when we kind of realized like maybe this doesn't have the depth we want. It doesn't have the it's not polished enough. Bloodstones, like at least it was kind of fun figuring that out for me.
yeah. It
Galactic
took,
Renaissance. It
yeah,
wasn't fun figuring out that this game just like every corner you turn, every corner that you wanted to like, everything that seemed like it might be cool, it just isn't fun to figure out like in this game what's wrong with it. I don't know. Not a fan.
Somewhere deep beneath the earth, the Bloodstone's dominoes are rising, but just very slightly.
um,
You want to go? You want to next, Ben, or should I take it?
sure. I'll go. It's a 4. That's about where I am. Yeah, I had that locked in beforehand too. Um, Again, just like I don't think that I like we have so many other games to play that like I would rather play. Um,
And we'll be talking about one of them right after this.
right? Yeah.
So
Like
true. So true.
I don't see a world like I would much rather play basically anything else for 2.5 hours or however long this took us. Um,
We didn't even
like
talk about it, but you're right. This is a long game for what it is.
there's so many
Yeah.
games that I can play for 2.5 hours that I have a much better time with. And there's nobody in particular that I'm thinking about when playing this game that I'm thinking, oh, this is a game for them. You know, like there's nobody that I'm thinking like, oh, they'll really enjoy Galactic Renaissance. This is really up their alley. I think that even if you're like a Euro gamer or somebody else, you're probably not gonna enjoy this. There's Euro games that will scratch this itch better than this does.
I mean, El Grande is technically a Euro game in its categorization. So I mean,
I'm
Yeah.
100% in the camp of just play Huang. Like,
yes, that's actually true. Huang is just a better game completely, and it's the same type of game even.
It gives you the
yeah,
same
I think it has a
feeling that
lot
it's
of
trying to
yeah.
evoke. Yeah.
I think it has a lot of the same goals in what it's trying to do, and I think Huang just does better.
Um, so I gave Bloodstones a 6.5. I think this is below Bloodstones, as Blake said. I think I think I'm gonna give it a 4.5 as well. I feel like this just doesn't earn a passing grade. Like it just doesn't feel done. Bloodstone's at
Yeah,
least like it has balance issues and all sorts of other things, but at least it felt like a game that was like somebody's vision. It may not be the right vision for us, but this just feels like it's just not even done to me.
Bloodstones was charming. I was charmed by
There's
it.
the Dominoes factor, keeping
Yeah.
Bloodstones alive. Yeah, good.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway, on a more positive note, Inish.
Inish.
Let's go,
In
Inish baby. Love it.
So Inish, 7.8 rating on BGG and 2.95. So that's crazy. So Inish is rated as heavier than Galactic Renaissance.
Right. Come on,
Which
Huh.
is
people. What are you doing here, people?
what are they doing? Dude, 20k ratings can't be wrong, right? I'm also the 7.8. Damn. I'm going to Well, Blake is the reigning Inish expert. Although Ben did take the most recent game, but Blake has played 20,000 games of Inish exactly.
He's every review on Board Game Geek.
He's responsible for every rating, but like a different play.
Oh
Yeah.
no. Oh, there's some low ratings in there. Don't pin those on me, man.
That's
I
that's
mean,
true. Yeah,
who's
they
bringing
had to
it
bring
down to a 7.8? You know what I mean?
that one guy who reviewed Raw and said this would be a good auction game, but the point the number tiles are just taking it a step too far, so I'm giving it a 4. You know,
One
like whatever.
mechanic too far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it was. But one mechanic too far.
Right, right.
Oh man.
But Inish, yeah, another Christian Martinez game, of course. This is one of the first games that like really got me into hobby board games. I had played games, right? I had played Risk. I had played, like stuff like Sheriff of Nottingham, stuff like that, like these lighter games. And I had even played like some Cosmic Encounter and quite enjoyed that. And I would say um, Cosmic Encounter and Inish were kind of two games that really got me into the hobby, and Inish especially. Played a ton of this in college, a lot of really late nights, a lot of really early mornings following those late nights type of thing with Inish, and it really is a beautiful design. I think. I obviously could talk about this game all day. What do you guys think makes most sense? Should we maybe um, talk about? I mean, because I think we're all going to talk positively on this. Should we maybe talk just a little bit about the structure of the whole thing here, and then
I
we
think
can
I think
comment
we
on the
should.
structure?
You know what I like the idea of? Let's talk about how every aspect of this game is better than every aspect of Galactic Renaissance. Now, since we're talking about
Mm,
this after,
Yeah, yeah.
so we could talk about how like the objective of this game is static. You come into the game, everybody's fighting for the same thing. Everybody already knows what they're fighting for from turn one, and it'll matter for the whole game. There's no objectives
yes,
getting flip
and the
flopped,
game is balanced around it,
and the
right?
game
It's
is
not
balanced around
some
it.
random
Yeah,
crap that
this
is going
is
to get thrown out
I
on the
hate
board.
this stupid new idea in board game design, which is like let's just randomly have the objectives be all sorts of crazy things. Who knows what's going to happen? Like the reason that's a thing in Twilight Imperium is because even in Twilight Imperium, you only need to score every objective once, and you can score each objective like on a turn of your choosing. It's not like constantly needing to score these random objectives that showed up every turn.
Yeah,
It's like,
and
oh,
when one
there's
comes out, it's going to stay there. You could score it five
yeah, and
turns
one
later.
stay and they stay out there. It's very different. Like I mean, it may sound like I'm being a Twilight Imperium apologist, and I guess to some extent I am, but I think that just the fact they are static and like you score them one time is totally different because it's like, oh, I mean, Imagine Galactic Renaissance is like, oh yeah, I just got to be in this system with somebody else, and I have to have the fewest elements, one of which is an institute, one time. I can orchestrate that, but to
Yeah.
have it consistently be the case and try to somehow set that up multiple times with how little you can do per turn is just annoying. I don't want to even. It's just annoying to do. And in this game, because this game is better than both of those systems because everybody knows what you're going to do, and this is why I think this game can be taught to your family. Because I mean, if there's one thing that's really annoying to have to teach to lighter board gamers like your family or people that are just getting to the hobby, as Blake said, this is a game that got him into the hobby. Um, is if the objective is clear, it's not different every game. It's like, all right, we're here, got to get 6 territories, got to rule over 6 people, have to be 6 X-rays, 666. Really easy to remember once you play the game. Everybody's got the same things in mind, and it also means that the player interaction is much more meaningful because you know what everybody is going for, and you can easily see on the board exactly where they're at and like where they're the highest of the among
Hmm.
those objectives
And
currently.
and even
Yeah.
if you can't see it, well, they have to tell you before they're allowed to win. You know,
Yes,
they have
yes.
to tell you like, by the way, I'm capable of winning right now. You better do something, and they take the pretender token, and then if the game if everybody passes, they win or can win, assuming nobody else has a pretender token of their own. Um,
Yeah. Here's another thing
yeah.
it does better than Galactic Renaissance, in that it is a somewhat like friendly area control game. One of my favorite mechanics is from Inish, which is you move into a region, it starts a clash, and both of you can just go, I don't think I want to fight. Do you want to fight? And you go, no, I don't want to fight. And then you just coexist peacefully. Like,
Yeah.
love that part of Inish where you can just kind of be like, well, we don't have to fight about it, you know? Like,
Yes, and it works because of the objectives that you have, right? Um, people want to be spread out, but they also want to rule over other people. So I could come into your territory, start a clash that you know you can win, and it might still be advantageous for you to say, well, I'm okay not fighting as well. I'm such a generous guy, but actually it's getting you one closer to your win condition, which is just brilliant.
Yeah,
It just works so well.
there's a beautiful synergy between the ruling over people objective and the being in six places objective, which is that the player or players that are spreading out are creating opportunities for the ruling over players to rule over the smaller number of them that are spread out. And so it's like by going for your objective, you have to think about the fact that you're making it easier for them to score an alternate win condition. And then the sanctuary people are just, they're just doing whatever. But that's visible in the board, so you know about it. And they typically have to go tall with them.
Right.
well, and
So
everybody's going to be going for the sanctuaries. It makes the spot more valuable. So you're like, well, I'm gonna go there too, and then that comes back to the like ruling over people as well.
yes, and kind of encourages combats. You need to have combats in order to stop people from winning. It's the number one way you stop people from winning. Otherwise, maybe you're doing some stuff with the epic tail cards. But I like this idea though of kind of talking about because Galactic Renaissance does have some of the same DNA as Inish, and one of them, you can kind of compare the planet tiles from Galactic Renaissance that you have a planet come out, and if you rule over that planet, you get this little planet tile that can give you a bonus, and you can activate it with your cards. Well, in Inish, you have these beautiful little tiles that all fit together really nicely. They're not hexagons. They're these. Here, I have one here. I don't even know what you would call this shape,
They
but they.
are functionally hexagons, but they are triskelions. They are like these
We're gonna have
triangle
ATO
things.
terminology.
Like,
Yeah,
look at how these fit together. I mean, for the folks listening, you won't be able to see, but it's just a beautiful little thing. You don't see stuff like this, and they're these huge tiles. So you can have, you could have a ton of people on one of them from every single player in the game, and it'll still fit it, which I think helps with the readability of the game, where it's not like, oh, well, what region is that in? But you don't have to play a card to take over a region. It's just depending on who has the most people there. And you also don't have to use one of your other cards in order to activate the special ability of that region. You get a special card for that region at the beginning of the turn if you control it. And I think that's great. And it's they're all pretty well balanced. I think there's certainly some that are more advantageous than others, and you might go for those. But maybe with the exception of Swamp,
yeah,
which
the
has the
swamp
special
pass.
ability of you get the pass,
That can
which
be good sometimes.
so there are some rare circumstances where having a pass that doesn't allow other people to end the round by also passing, because Ben mentioned what I agree is one of my favorite mechanics in board gaming that is in this game, which is the ability to say, I don't want to have a combat, let's coexist, and it working so beautifully with the rest of the mechanics. I also really, really love in this game the ability to completely pass your turn and be able to play again without any restrictions once it comes back around to you. And the only cost is that you really have to consider, well, is everybody else going to pass too? Because if they do, then turn is over, and whatever plans I had here with this turn, they're gone. But sort of an aside, the thing I'm talking about here is the cards related to each tile and how elegant that is compared to these little planet tiles that you pick up and take, and you have to activate them with a card that you might not even have in your hand. And in order to take them, you have to have a particular card that you only have one of in your whole deck, and
Yeah,
it's just a little annoying.
it, in Inish, you just get it if you have the most people there. Like,
It's
or
just
Yeah,
wasted design space in Galactic Renaissance and Inish. It just happens as a process of playing the game. It's not something, and it's but at the same time, because it's easy to take them from people, people might fight over it. Like we Galactic Renaissance, like nobody's coming to your planet to use their card to steal it and end their turn. You know,
right.
like
Yeah,
that
because
just doesn't
I could
happen.
just go get a new planet with
Yeah,
that card.
exactly. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to do that. It's not action efficient,
Yeah.
and so it just seems like a waste.
Um, the other part of this game that I think is, well, I mean, every part of it, but another part of this game that is much better than Galactic Renaissance, and also just great in general, is the draft in this game.
Yes.
Everything starts off with a drafting phase because the meat of this game, other than what you have going on the board, well, how are you going to interact with that? You have a set of cards. There's four per player plus one, and so in a three-player game, you'll have 13 cards, and one card will get left out of the draft, so everyone's going to end up with four. And these cards are how you interact with the board. They can place guys down. They can move guys around in different ways. They can replace an enemy's guy with one of your guys. And one of those cards in the whole draft is the exploration card. It's going to add one new tile to the board. And there's a very small number. I think maybe just one Epic Tale card um, in the expansion that lets you accelerate how many tiles are coming out, but it's very capped on how fast the board is going to grow. Whereas Galactic Renaissance, you could have all three people right in a row bring out a new planet, and then all of a sudden the board's way cluttered. It's a slow build with Inish for the board.
and all the tiles are really cool.
They
Yeah, I
are.
mean,
They
and then
all got character.
well, I guess that goes right into the next point, which is that the art for this game is amazing. The table
So
presence in
good.
this game, the minis are perfect for what it is, the right size. You got some nice little Celtic warriors, lads and lasses, and you have this great art on the tiles. You have this amazing art on the cards, and especially the Epic Tales cards have some superb art. And the cards are tarot size, so you really get to see the art to its fullest.
Yeah,
And just in our last play, I insisted on sleeving the action cards because I just wanted to protect these cards.
yeah,
They
they're
look
so
so
pretty.
nice.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of the drafting phase in this game? Are you excited as excited about it as I am? Because I love the drafting in this.
I like the drafting. Yeah. I'm not as big of a card gamer as you two, but I I enjoy it. It's kind of an interesting card draft because with the clashes, if you want to save one of your dudes, you just have to sacrifice a card. I like, obviously last game I played the druid card like every round.
That's
Um,
you were druiding, sure, yeah.
I love the druid card because as somebody who isn't necessarily that in tune with like the relative power of some cards, because I just get to see what you guys find worth playing and then take it. You know,
Mm,
like I just get to mine through and go, well, this seemed really important. I really like, and all of the base action cards, you really get to be familiar with why they're good because you're using them every round and it's just those cards. You can
This,
get very familiar with it very quickly.
yeah, I think that's another thing that's great about this particular game, and more specifically the draft, compared to a lot of other modern board games. Actually, is that because you're drafting these cards, you see them every turn, they come around. You get to know all you kind of just maybe even just in one play you learn what everyone's capable of quite quickly, and by process of elimination you know what someone might or might not have. Certainly any card you have nobody else has, and but you also know like what cards you passed, just typical drafting stuff. But because the card pool is so limited, um, you have this just great idea of what's going on.
yeah,
And
it's trackable, but not
it's
like not complete information, but you
It's not
have enough
complete
to work on.
information, but it is it's the perfect amount of drafting information. If somebody came to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to play Inish, or do you want to do like a Magic the Gathering draft?" I will say Inish 10 out of 10 times, because I think that even though drafting MTG is fun, uh, sir, it gets this the minimum size drafting pot for MTG is 6, and in an MTG draft, you're typically thinking about what's good for you. And so it's like, well, the guy's next to me is in blue. The other guy next to me is in red. I guess black and green are open. Maybe I'll be in black and green. And you're kind of like looking at what's coming to you and making decisions based on that. But Inish takes that a layer further. It's not just about what's good for you. Of course, you do care about that, but also you're thinking more about what everybody else took. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. And because it's not like some random TCG booster pack of cards, like you have no idea what other people have seen. Like they might have seen all sorts of insane, crazy stuff that you have no idea about until it actually gets played in the game. In Inish, you know everything that's in the pool. Every possibility
Well,
can be kind of.
there is one card that's left out just to
There's
keep it
that's
spicy.
true. That's the spicy thing is that
Yeah.
who's got that card? Oh, it was left out all along. But you know what I mean. Like you have a much better idea of like what people are capable of, and
Yes.
that's from like from a more strategic like thinky perspective, that is way better. This game makes you
Yes.
feel really smart when you're keeping on top of things, and it encourages you to keep thinking and keep staying on top of things just innately.
Yeah.
And I love that in
Absolutely.
a game.
You're
Yeah.
like game planning during that drafting phase, and you compare that to Galactic Renaissance with the deck stacking. That, as we kind of talked about, you have very little control over what you end up actually doing there because most of the turns end up playing themselves. In Inish, it's like, well, we have this whole cool phase where we're probably going to do some fighting and shifting the board around, and we're gonna almost certainly going to be adding one tile unless the exploration card was the one card that was left out, and maybe there's some new land that I can try to control. You're thinking about all these things during the drafting phase and really making a plan of it, and you're also thinking about what other people are doing because, as Will said, there's a pretty limited card pool, and you might be looking and saying, well, I've got the druid. I mean, how do you pass up the druid? Well, how does he pass up the druid? If I give it to him, I'm pretty darn sure he's going to have the druid, and maybe I really need to take migration here, which will let me move all of my guys from the capital out into every surrounding region, and I can have all these advantageous battles. There's just so much fun space there.
Yeah,
Well,
it encourages hate drafting. I've definitely hate drafted in the Innistrash where I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
like,
for sure.
this isn't the best card for me out of this set, but I really don't want Will to have it. And that's another mechanic in this game that's interesting is the Flock of Crows, which is the turn order, like what order you're playing in can switch. So, and
Yes.
that affects the draft as well. So sometimes it's like, well, and sometimes you're spicing it up for the other person. You're kind of trying to goad the person you're passing cards to be like, well, I think they could use a conquest. There's sometimes the anti-hate draft, which is you're not too worried about this person to your left, so you're gonna slip them something good
Mm-hmm.
to try to get them to go for somebody else.
And then
You
they
know?
don't take
Yes.
it and it comes around back to you.
Yeah.
That's the last card passed. You're like, what the hell am I going to do with a conquest? I
Yeah.
wasn't planning on that. I already have the migration, and like I was going to have one battle. Now I got to have two. What the
Yeah.
heck? Yeah, that part truly is fun. One other thing that maybe I play this up some in my own games just because I have such a history with this one and playing it in college and everything, but um, you kind of have a leader in this game, the brand, right? And that you're trying to elect the whole thematically what you're doing in this game is you're trying to elect like a new king. And there's a temporary ruler called the brand, and the brand is decided based on who has control of the capital at the beginning of the round. And if for some reason it's tied or something, then the brand will just stay with whoever it was. And it's so funny because you read the rule book and you start going, well, why does the brand have to shuffle the cards and deal them out to everybody in the draft? And why does the brand have to flip the flock of crows? And you even look at like the exploration card and you're like, well, why does the brand get to say where this new tile goes down? And some of
That's
the obviously where the exploration tile goes has a gameplay. Mechanically that's going to change how the game goes. But who's passing out the cards for the draft? Like passing them out face down, that doesn't change the gameplay. But it has this psychological impact of like, I want to be the brand. I need to be the brand. I need to flip that flock of crows, and I just love that about this.
I
It's so much
Blake's
joy in that.
thesis: the psychosomatic effect of being the brand. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. It I do love how that works with the exploration card because it is one
Yes.
of the most important ones too. And it gives you as the brand this small amount of like soft power,
Mm.
It's just, oh, I get to this, like you're exploring, but I get to decide how this attaches to the rest of the board. And like last game we played, I used that to just surround the capital because that's what I wanted, and I kept being the brand. And it was,
Mhm.
I want to have access to all this stuff. I don't want you to go off into the like way far away. Just stay close to me, you know. And it can give you some advantages like over time, but
Yes.
um,
The
but it
main
is a very
advantage
minor
is
thing.
with
Yeah.
tie breaking for victory conditions, because obviously we have these three victory conditions. If two people have one victory condition, and you have to get six of a thing for each of these victory conditions. If you have seven or eight of a thing, it still just counts as meeting that one victory condition. It's not like being in eight territories is better than being in six. If you're in six, you've met the victory condition. Now, it might be a little bit harder to get you below six if you're in eight. That's kind of another story. I'm saying at the end of the round, when we're saying, do you still have your victory condition, right? Well, you have one victory condition, another person has one victory condition. You're going to tie, you're going to go to a new round. This is the fun little Matagot win con thing with this. Well, the brand gets to say, no, I'm the brand. And as a matter of fact, I will win. And so there's a little bit of a bonus there, too. Really, quite a big bonus there for the brand. Another good reason to want to be them.
Yeah. But you get all these responsibilities too.
Yes. And the way I am, if I'm not the brand, I'm not shuffling, and I'm reminding the brand. I'm gonna let them know, like, you got some duties to take care of, my friend. You want to be the king of Ireland? I mean, come on, step it up a level. That's just the truth. Yep.
Mhm.
We haven't talked about epic tale cards that much. I mean, we've mentioned them, but that's
Or
another thing that I think is
deeds.
so brilliant here. Yeah, the deeds as well. The deeds are very important. What should we start with, Ben?
I'll talk about deeds. Deeds are this thing that you can get in three-player. It's just from the bard. I think there might be ways to get it if you have higher play count. I don't know, but
There
if
are.
you
Yeah.
can play the bard as a reaction after you like kill somebody, after you kill a clan, and he writes a really cool poem, uh, like Beowulf, about it, and it just increases your street cred so that you have to meet it just counts as one of the conditions for one of the victory conditions that you're going for. Technically, all of them, but not if you're like in five places and control five sanctuaries. It doesn't count for both.
Right.
But it makes it so much easier to win. Now you have to worry about being in five places or controlling five sanctuaries, or you can get more than one deed, like Will did last game, and you can be worrying about just being in four sanctuaries, ruling over
Hmm.
four guys, having four
And
things.
and let me tell you, that will paint a target on your back once you have a deed or two. It really
Yeah,
does.
Yeah, it's the game being balanced around the victory condition being six really makes you feel the power of the deeds, because it's so much easier if you have like a deed or two to win kind of out of nowhere, and people who played the game multiple times will be aware of that. Even if you're not
Yes.
presenting a win at that exact moment, if you're sitting on a couple deeds, it's easy to manufacture one, and people will be aware of that, as they should be. And so it's sort of like, ironically, the person who has the deeds maybe has less of a table presence in terms of miniatures or whatever because they had to spend resources getting the deeds. It's almost like they're the most transparent thing for people to worry about, just because people are worried about how easy it is for you to do something now that you have them. Um,
Yes.
whereas
And
the
it's quite
people that,
hard to take away deeds. I mean, you have to
yes,
wipe someone off of the board, and then they are going to lose their deeds, and that's quite difficult. Let me tell you,
yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
they're in any region with a citadel, which with the citadels you can just kind of hop a guy in and protect him from dying. Um, if they got any of those, they're going to be bunkered up pretty well. Though it's funny you mentioned about eliminating them off the board. There is no player elimination in this game. And Blake has used this fact to his advantage in a number of games that I've played with him. If you lose all of your guys, you get completely wiped out. You can just spawn two new guys somewhere. Um,
Yeah, you can put them in different places even, and you can parlay that into a win.
the cockroach strat.
the
Yeah, you can
cockroach strat.
cockroach pretty hard. It's true. I love doing that when presented the opportunity. If I don't get like early new clans or other ways to get multiple guys on the board, I might like uh, you know kamikaze my guys in just to spawn a couple new ones if given the chance. Um,
Yeah, which I guess we should really just be like, well, you can't even do that because it's like if you want to keep clashing, we just kind of have to kill your guys. Otherwise, you might just kill all of our guys.
yeah, yeah.
We
There's, I
have
mean,
to let you
there's,
cockroach. Yeah,
yeah. The, I guess then the epic tales, huh?
epic tales.
Epic Tales. I will
So
say that. No, go ahead, Blake. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that epic tales are way cooler than the the specialists in Galactic Renaissance. And
Oh, sure. Yeah.
let me just
Yeah.
say this: the specialists, one of the issues with them, like the epic tales, right? It's kind of hard to get an epic tale, but there are certain cards you can get in the draft that are going to get you epic tales, and then there's certain cards related to controlling the areas that might get you epic tales. Um, they're gonna usually be one time use, and I say usually because we're coming off a hot game where Ben got to use the same epic tale like 4 or 5 times, and it was totally epic. It was the
Yeah.
most epic of tales.
Rare
Um,
situation, but it happens.
There's
but
this.
but
Yeah.
because they're usually one time use, these are some really powerful effects for the most part. Some of them are a little situational, but for the most part, very powerful effects. You look at Galactic Renaissance, and like some of the specialists are really powerful, and then others are just not. But you're gonna keep seeing them over and over again, and so like I don't know, like you can't just put one in that's like totally game breaking because then you would see it, every 3 or 4 or 5 turns or whatever, and it would be dumb. Whereas with this, boom, I can slap down some cool freaking epic tale that completely changes the tide of a battle or allows me to move when I shouldn't or affect the board that I'm don't even have anybody anywhere near it, affect it from across the map or something like that. And I think that's really really cool. It adds this element of we do this whole draft and we have so much information about what other people have and maybe should be able to do and what they're planning, and then they have 1 or 2 or 3 epic tales sitting there in their hand, and you go, well, I just don't know what they're up to, man. And you got to get ready for it, and it starts being these mind games. I think that's lovely.
I'm gonna be the resident Bloodstone's apologist. No, I'm just kidding. I I'm gonna say Inish is almost perfect for me, but if I did have a con, it would be the Epic Tales kind of situationality. Uh,
Mm.
some of them are generically quite strong. Some of them are situational, but if you're in that situation, they're going to be incredibly impactful. And some of them are situational and they can only be used in that situation and they're just kind of okay. And while none of them are like worthless, I will say that if I have to create a con for this game, and I'm really stretching here because, this is, I don't mind this really at all. It's that, there's just inherently a lot of variance in that deck. And I think
Mm.
there are a lot of games that have this kind of thing in them. Dune Imperium has intrigue cards. Of course, Twilight Imperium has action cards. Dwellings has spells. So many games have a mechanic that's similar to this, which is to mix things up, to provide a little bit of spice that isn't open information to other players to sort of make things exciting. What does he have in his big old hand? I don't know, but I think that Inish is actually my favorite implementation of this mechanic of any of the games that we play that has this. And Dune Imperium is probably my least favorite because there's even more variance in that deck and how useful the cards are. Whereas I don't think there are any like useless cards in the Epic Tale deck. And so while this is my favorite implementation of this particular board game mechanic, it's not a board game mechanic that I love, and it's the only mechanic in this game that I don't love. And so sometimes you do get some sicko plays with an epic tale in this game, or even multiple epic tales. And sometimes you got something that's kind of hard to use, and maybe it just sits in your hand and you don't use it that game, or something like that. And Blake's the expert, so maybe I'm just a noob, and I should get good. But
No, I think that's a totally fair criticism. Yes.
okay, well then I'll retain that as my
Yeah.
only criticism of this game.
The only thing I'll add to it is that I feel like as you play this game more and more, you get a better sense of like how much do I need to hold back on this turn, right? Like, okay, that guy has two epic tales in his hand, and he's passed a couple times. He's saved three of his action cards, and everybody else has kind of played. Okay, well, I might need to scrap my plan and be ready for that guy to hit us with the Cobra Strike. I mean, someone could
True.
really be going for the victory out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
that's definitely something that can happen in this game that I could see people maybe not liking so much. The game can just end if you're not paying attention, or even if you are paying attention, it could just end. And for me personally, I really enjoy that because
Yeah, this is
for me, it's like, okay, let's play another. Let's do another round.
yeah, this
Yeah,
is a
it's
game you can
yeah.
definitely just be like, "Hey, that was a good game. Let's do it again." Like
Yeah,
and the fact that this game is half or maybe even a third of the length of Galactic Renaissance, although we don't need to always need to use Galactic Renaissance as the measuring stick, but just in general, this game can easily be played under an hour. It's got way less setup than Galactic Renaissance or even most games in general. You kind of just get your minis and then you put out the very very small initial board and then draft, and then that's you're already in the first round.
the game can also go really long, which is why I recommend, even if you don't have the expansion Seasons of Inish, look up Seasons of Inish, look up the I Need a King module. So Seasons of Inish is a modular expansion. I think it has like 5 modules. One of them is the I Need a King module, and here's the entire module. It's a piece of cardboard that says, well, if the game like gets tied up because multiple people had taken the pretender token and then retained their victory conditions by the time everybody had passed, and the game didn't end because of that, and neither of them were the brand. Well, now someone needs to win next turn, otherwise the brand is going to just win. That's basically what it says. And if you don't have Seasons of Finish, I recommend playing with that just to prevent situations where, I mean, I've played a 5-hour game of Inish before, and
Jeez,
Jeez,
really?
yeah,
which is
I've never yeah.
ridiculous, right? Because this
Yeah.
game can go an hour. I think most games at 4-player are going to be between like an hour and a half and 2 hours. Um, but yeah, I've had games where it's just like everybody keeps tying, and yeah, you do. I think that is a nice way to sort of cap it.
Yeah, we need a king can be implemented whether or not you have the expansion, and even if you do get the expansion, it's basically just for like the more epic tale cards. This is definitely a game where like you don't. The base game is 100% sufficient. Like
Absolutely.
you should never feel pressured to like buy the expansion for this game to like for it to feel complete. This
Yeah.
is another reason this is a good family game. You just get one game in the box. You're set. You can get hundreds of hours out of this, and there's still
Yes.
stuff to discover and enjoy.
Yeah. The other modules I don't find very interesting. One of them like adds some changing, like sort of passive effects, and they theme it around seasons, so it rotates, through the 4 seasons, and they have these various effects. And then another one of them adds sea tiles that can connect spaces from across the map. It's basically portals, these sea tiles,
Oh,
and
that was the beginning of the obsession.
yeah, and I don't think it needs it. I just don't.
Yeah.
Although
Now we
there
see
certainly are
the
some
sign.
cool cards, like if you control um, one of these, you know, coast tiles, then there certainly are some cool cards they've come up with attached to those tiles. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily worth playing with.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
Inish.
Inish.
Mm. Yeah, Inish.
Well, shall we move to scoring?
I think so.
All right.
I suppose.
I think the time has come. So the 7.8 rating for Inish will be likely exceeded by all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is this rated? This is overall 100. Rated 100. So this is actually a 91 in strategy. So actually, this is very similarly placed to Forbidden Stars, which is to say it's
Mm.
kind of lurking near the bottom of the top 100 of both. I think Forbidden Stars was number 100 in strategy and like 130 something overall. So they're quite similar. Inish more commercially successful. Um, for multiple reasons. Probably the biggest is, frankly, that it's not been out of print since it was printed the first time. But
Yeah.
also because this is a more approachable, marketable game that, like I said, you can play it with your family, but you can sink your teeth into it if you're like a real hardcore board gamer as well. Like I think there's something here for everybody. So I could, if anything, I would even put it higher, but I'm not like the god of BGG who decides where these board games are ranked. And we're very fortunate as people in this hobby that there are many, many, many good board games. And so the fact people argue about what should be in the top 100 it's a good thing. It means there are that many good games, you know.
Yes.
But anyway, should I go first? Ben, do you want to go first? Blake went first last time.
You can go first, Will. I'm still
I'll go first.
calculating.
I'm gonna give this one. Whoops! I just banged my mic. I'm gonna give this a strong 9.5. Um, this is a great game. This is almost perfect. Like I said, I just have a very minor quibble with the Epic Tales existing at all, because I think I love the drafting part of this game and the area control part of this game and the combat and the tile placement, the art. This is all perfect. This is like an absolutely amazing game. I think that the reason why I get stuck on the Epic Tales thing a little bit is because I love the amount of information you have from the draft, and when something shows up to kind of mess that up, it can be really cool and epic, especially if you're the one who's doing the cool and epic thing. But I just feel like the amount of information in the draft is so perfect. And there's like a little bit of tension, who took the card? I passed it, but I don't know which of them has it. There's so much to think about there. And there's so much to get stuck on and like strategize over. And it's so juicy and fun to think about. And because the Epic Tale cards you don't have any information about really, other than that they drew one, you don't have anything to think about as much, except that they have it. It's like, okay, they now have an unknown resource that I have to account for when I'm making plans, but you have no idea whether it's actually relevant or not. You just have to plan as if it's going to be relevant. And but because it's a little murkier there, I think that's the only reason I don't give this game a 10. Um, but at the same time, maybe playing this game without Epic Tales would be not enough. Maybe it's an essential part of the game to make it feel like it's complete. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe
The
it's
the
hard.
power on some of the action cards is very much predicated on them being able to get you an epic tale. So you
Yeah,
would
that's
certainly have to make
true.
some changes to make a version of this without epic tales work. But yeah, again, I think it's a fair point, and like maybe like distilling this down to sort of a pure non-epic tale version of the game would be exciting and fun.
Yeah, I mean, it might be worth like just house ruling a game one time and trying it, and then making the bard have some other effect as like the secondary thing, like deed plus whatever else. Might be worth just giving it a try sometime, see how it goes. I mean, maybe there's not enough stuff going on. Maybe you want to throw in the Epic Tales anyway. But anyway, that's just my point. And obviously, I'm still getting it a 9.5. I'm not like seriously criticizing it anyway. This is like an absolute classic board game for anybody, not just an area control gamer. And I would recommend it. In fact, I have recommended it. I saw a couple at the board game store, at one of the local places, and they were hunting for a new game to play with their kids. They were like 12 and 14, two sons or something, and they were over in the in the Wingspan section or something like that.
Oh no.
And
The resident Wingspan disrespecter has
and I and I
logged
and,
into the
and I
chat.
and I came over to them. I was like, hey, you know what? Wingspan, you're gonna have to get all these expansions. Let me tell you, you can just buy this Inish game. I know it looks like it's a little Celtic. Maybe that's not up your alley. Maybe you don't like the Celts or their art, their culture, but just give this game a shot. I promise it will not disappoint you. Like, I mean, I've gone out of my way in real life to like shill this game. That's how
Yeah.
that's how much confidence I have in it, that like I think if people just play it and like learn it, they'll like it and maybe even love it. So it's a very good game. That's me.
Okay.
Yeah. Respectable rating.
Yeah, my ratings so far have mostly just been on how I feel that given day, as I think most ratings are. Um, I'm giving this a 9.1, just to give myself some more room to go forward. You know, I don't think I've given out a rating higher than 9 so far. I think I gave Forbidden Stars a 9, and part of my theory of mind there is I think I'd rather play Inish than Forbidden Stars. Um,
Oh no! Where's
but
Will going? Where's he
I
at?
think I think it comes down to mostly just time. Um,
That's
but
true. Yeah.
also, like, I enjoy how this game makes me feel more than I do Forbidden Stars. Forbidden Stars adds a little bit of stress into my life. It's not a bad kind of stress. It's good. I have a good time. But Inish is usually uh, a good time, and I'm not stressing too much, you know. And I just love it. I really like it. There's my review, you know, and I think it's got the gram ability, the grandma ability. You could teach this to a grandma potentially. Maybe not my grandma. She has dementia. It probably wouldn't go very well, but like you could teach it to a
She
grandma.
might even remember. She might even remember when they had to, talk to the Bran about who they were going to elect as king.
It's true. She might.
Yeah, another respectable rating for Anish. I'm glad to hear it, you guys. I'm glad to hear some good ratings for the game. Obviously, I love this one. I think it's a perfect game if we're using that scale. I think it's perfect for what it is. But that does not mean that I am giving Inish a 10. I thought about it. I was up late last night thinking about, am I going to give it a 10? Am I not going to give it a 10? And I'm not. I'm going to give it a 9.5 because it's just great, you know. And I agree that there are certainly some things about the game that are not exactly what I want 100% of the time, but that's life, you know.
That
It's a great game and you should play it.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is a very strong 9.5. Like it's for me, and I'm sure from you as well, Blake. Uh, it's really hard to find anything wrong with this game, and it's an amazing design, a landmark design. I think this is like, I feel like it's hard to know what's going to happen, 10 or 20 years down the line in this industry, but I hope that in the long run, this is seen in the same vein as a game like El Grande, as just like a
Mm,
classic in the genre. Because I think that mixing drafting and area control is not done very often. And it's also probably not, it's probably hard to do well. And
yeah,
so this game being as simple as it is on the face, but also being so strategically deep is hard. It's so hard to hit that right balance, and this game absolutely hits it right in the sweet spot. And I have to imagine that any design that comes after this in the same sort of niche of mixing, drafting, and area control, it runs the risk of being too complicated, having too many mechanics, or the drafting not being as interesting, or maybe the epic tail deck not being as good. Maybe there's more variance than there is in this one. It's like there's so many ways it can go wrong, and Inish is like it just hits this. It's so good and like hits the right level of amount that you have to think, and I'm engaged the whole game and just the right amount of level of engagement where I'm not so much. I'm not sweating literally, but I'm
Mhm.
internally sweating because I'm trying to figure out how to win and what's he trying to
Mm,
do and what's he got, what epic tales does he have, and how do I pass enough times to make Ben play out his 8 card hand that he's been sitting on. you know,
right. Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm curious what y'all think about this. Inish is a really weird game, right? It feels almost inspired, right? Like you start looking at everything that's going on here, and it's just it's so crazy that it all works together. And I think part of why I was so excited for Galactic Renaissance is that you get your hand on that rule book, which again is terrible, but once you parse out what they're actually going for in there, it is really exciting how many different ideas are in the game, and it feels a lot like Inish in that way of like there's so many cool ideas here, and by God, if they just were to fit all together in the way that Inish does, it would have been an insane experience playing that, and that's sort of how I feel with Inish is like it just all works. There's not a part of the game for me that feels out of place. it just it just fits, and I love it for that reason alone. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Do you feel that way at all? Where it's almost like, man, what was Christian Martinez? Did he wake up from some sort of dream, having been given the idea for Inish by like the other side or something, and then he
when
Yeah,
he tried to
it,
recreate this inspiration? I
it
don't know.
does feel that way sometimes. Yeah, it's one of those things where it would be hard for me to aspire because I've dabbled with like designing games and stuff. It's hard for me to aspire to something like Inish, where it's oh like mixing all of these ideas in a way that works. And it's hard for me to imagine that it didn't just come out of his brain fully formed and manifested right before us. I'm sure it went through playtesting. I'm sure that
Yeah,
they like went through a bunch of versions of this game that sucked. But it's hard for me to imagine that with what the finished product is. It really feels like they struck some gold and knew what they
it
had,
makes it
and
even
this is what
harder
they
to
were.
imagine after you play Galactic Renaissance, and it's like, by God, maybe they don't play test. I
this
mean,
game
what the heck
feels,
happened?
I get what you're saying. This game feels kind of inspired. It's like he was in a state of grace when he designed it. I think the uh it feels like it could be timeless. Like if it didn't have the epic tail deck, and this is separately from my criticism of like whether or not it's necessary or whatever, but just because I'm just bringing it up because I think old board games wouldn't have that kind of thing. But because I mean, like if it were just the drafting and like the area control part of it, this almost feels like a game that could have been like the game that the Norse brought with them when they invaded England, and at the Battle of Hastings, an Inish board was discovered with the
The
with the yeah,
archaeologists.
the archaeology. No, no, but like seriously, like I mean, if you
Yeah.
guys, I don't know if you guys have ever played what's called the Viking game, but it's like Viking chess. It's like a cool old board game, like like these old board games that have existed in many places across the world. It feels like Inish is almost has that kind of timeless quality to it, where it's just like it's kind of separated from a lot of other board games in a lot of ways. Like, why is it six?
Yeah,
You
Mm.
need of everything, why is it this way, and it all like makes sense in the game and it all works perfectly, but it's one of those games that just feels like it just sprung out of somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Right.
I talked about this idea one time with the song "In the Hall of the Mountain King," which is da, 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 da. Like it. That's a song that feels inspired, inevitable to me of like something that is like someone had to make a song, maybe not exactly like that, but something dang close where it's
Hmm.
like and Inish gives me a similar like feeling of yeah it came out of a dream, it came out of some divine inspiration, what have you, of this is a design that works well together, these pieces fit in a very pleasing way, and it had to come about at some point,
Yeah.
so with the
The
amount of
design of
monkeys
Inish
on
was inevitable.
typewriters, yeah.
But it's because it has certainly some elements you see in other games, but the victory condition thing is so unique that you start to wonder, well, like, how the heck did you build around that, or did you build around that? Was that not the idea from the beginning? Whereas some games you can kind of look and you go, okay, well, they had played other drafting games and they had played other area control games, and they liked stuff from these four games and tried to bring those ideas together. Like, I can't pick out you
Yeah.
know a ton of things from Inish where I'm like, oh yeah, that came from this other game, and
you know
maybe that's just from lack of knowledge. But
here's something I'll say about it, and this is like, we haven't reviewed Dune Imperium or anything, but Dune Imperium feels kind of, it's a good game, but it feels iterative. It feels
yeah,
like it's expanding on previous things in the genre that we've seen before, worker placement, whatever, other mechanics that have been explored and we know work well. And Inish feels kind of out of left field, using some weird stuff that you don't see a lot in a
Well,
lot of
but
other
also
games.
Dune Imperium is just Arctic Scavengers too, right? So I mean,
Right, it's iterative. It's like
yeah.
it's an expansion on some of these other ideas we've had before.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's kind of where I'm at with this one, of like, that's
Well,
kind of what I'm getting at with like this idea of it being inspired. It feels so unique.
well, just as a teaser for when we talk about Kemet, but I feel like it's the anti-Kemet in that way. Inish is
Mm.
like going off in its own direction, way different from every other area control game, I think. Kemet is the opposite. It's trying to fix all the problems of the area control genre and taking all of the sins unto itself and and shouldering them successfully. And it's like, oh, we there's this problem in area control games. People just don't want to fight each other. It's like, oh, we'll make you want to fight. Trust me.
Right.
And it's like, oh, yeah, people don't really like that. It's hard to move around. You get stuck in an area control game, and it's hard to like move, like in Bloodstones. Kemet's like, you could freaking teleport. You
Yeah. It's true.
asymmetry is whatever. I don't really like having to think about like which faction I want to pick. No problem. You build your faction as you go. Like they
Right.
just like they went down the list of all the common complaints of area control games, and they were like, oh, we'll just like fix each of these one by one. And Inish was like the opposite of that. It's like, man, who cares what those the other guys are doing? I'm just gonna do this other totally crazy thing, and it's gonna work.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
both of
that's a
them are.
fun way to put it.
Yeah, dice. What are you talking about? What do we need those things for? Oh.
Yeah, no dice in either game as well. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, I think
we,
that covers it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we're hitting up our threshold of how long people are willing to listen to us. Yeah,
It's
Well,
a
that
real
was
shame because
way before
we were
now.
we were
that's true.
cooking.
We hit that about an hour and 37 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. All
All
right.
right.
Well, thanks for making it this far. If you did, be sure to show your support for us however you want to, whether it's watching, liking, subscribing, or none
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah.
Skipping.
Comment. Let us know we're not speaking into the void
Yeah.
alone.
Shout out to our commenter on the last video, Raincoats for Dogs.
Yeah, shout out. All right.
Shout out to Raincoats for Dogs. Yeah.
I'll see you guys next time.
See ya.